In the year 1630, the town of Loudon was haunted by a man who was supposed to be its shepherd. Urbain Grandier, the parish priest, was a man of two faces. To the world he was brilliant, handsome, and silver-tongued. But beneath the black robes lay a heart of iron and a soul stained by corruption. Grandier was a scourge to the town. He was not just a priest. He was a predator. Higher-ranking fathers and husbands watched in silent rage as he brought dishonor to their families. He was a master of pettifogging, using the law like a dagger to silence anyone who stood in his way. He was so hated that many families refused to take the sacrament from his hands, begging for permission to pray in any church where he was not present. Grandier felt untouchable. He aligned himself with the Huguenots, a powerful religious faction, and used their protection to mock the church itself. He ridiculed other monks and even granted marriage licenses he had no right to give. He was a man standing on a pedestal of his own pride, unaware that the ground was rotting beneath him. The law finally caught up to him, or so it seemed. In June 1630, the Bishop of Poitiers had Grandier arrested. The charges were scandalous. Two priests, Gervais Metchen and Louis Bouillard, swore under oath that they had caught Grandier in the most unholy acts. They claimed to have found him in the dark of the night, lying with women on the very floor of the church behind locked doors. They saw women entering his room at midnight, staying until the early hours while servants brought them secret suppers. It should have been his end. But Grandier was a snake that knew how to slip through a golden grip. His friends used bribery and terrifying threats to force the witnesses to take back their words. Grandier walked free, returning to Loudon not with humility, but with a laurel branch in his hand, a sign of victory. He began to sue his enemies for every penny they had. He was out of the wood, or so he thought. He did not know that God, or perhaps something much darker, was preparing to make him a memorable example to all ages. While Grandier was busy with his lawsuits, a quiet horror was blooming 6 years earlier in a new convent. The Ursuline nuns had come to Loudun. These were not common women. They were the daughters of nobility, living in a house of stone and shadow. When their spiritual leader died, Grandier, greedy for power, offered to take his place. He was rejected with scorn. Instead, the convent chose Canon Mignon, a man who hated Grandier with a holy fervor. Grandier was furious. He vowed to give the new confessor plenty of work. He did not know how prophetic those words would be. Soon, the silence of the convent was broken. It started with whispers, then extraordinary symptoms that the nuns tried desperately to hide. They feared that if the world knew, their convent would be ruined. They called in doctors and apothecaries, thinking the sisters were suffering from a disease of the blood or the mind. But medicine could not explain what happened next. 17 nuns began to change. Their bodies would twist into shapes that no human bone should allow. They were seized by convulsions so violent that it took multiple men to hold them down. In the middle of their prayers, their voices would drop into a low, guttural rasp. Voices that spoke of hatred and ancient things. The secret could not be kept. The town began to flee from the convent, as if it were a diabolical residence. The sisters, once noble and proud, were left in deep poverty, forced to work with their hands between bouts of screaming madness. Finally, the church had no other choice. They began the exorcisms. The ritual was terrifying. As the priests chanted, the Mother Superior was lifted off the ground by an invisible force. The demon within her began to answer secret thoughts that had never been spoken aloud. When the priests demanded to know why the evil one had entered this holy place, the voice hissed a single word: hatred. But then came the question that would change history. The exorcists demanded the name of the magician, the name of the human who had invited the demons in. The possessed nun contorted, her eyes rolling back into her head as she shrieked a name that silenced the room: Urbain Grandier. Canon Mignon and his assistants stood in frozen shock. They knew Grandier was a sinner, a scandal, and a liar, but they never imagined he was a sorcerer. and the demons were only just beginning to speak. They repeated the questions again and again, hoping for a different name. But every time the demon spoke through the gasping, contorting girls, the answer remained the same. The trap was set. The man who had walked back into Loudon with a laurel branch of victory had no idea that an invisible spirit was already weaving the rope for his neck.